What is up? What is up? Welcome back to another episode of The Rich Agent. And I'm more excited than I've been having other guests, successful guests on here. I've got a super successful guest, and he just happens to be my brother, Luke. And so, Luke, why don't you introduce yourself?
So thank you, Stephen. It's been too long. I'm actually been shot. What season is this? Are you guys on season 2?
Second episode,
1.2. No, excited to be here. So name's Luke. For those who don't know, I'm Stephen's older brother. Not the better looking one, but the smarter one for sure. Cody knows that. No, so I run a company called Remindermedia. It's a sales and marketing company. So we service small businesses in about 142 different industries and work with about 70,000 clients over the course of a year. Marketing is a broad term. So our niche in marketing is referral-based marketing. So that's really where our bread and butter is, where we're the best, is focusing on helping people really stay in touch with their database to generate more referrals. And that's what we've been doing almost for 18 years now. It's been a fun ride.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons I'm so excited to bring you on is we've had investors on here, net worth 15 million, something like that. And you guys are, a $70 million revenue company. And so we're all trying to get to that, obviously, and scale things up. And so I'm really curious, what are the next steps, the next rungs in the ladder to grow such a large company? And what's something that we can look to go, these are the mistakes that the pain points, you're going to face when you try to get to that level?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I don't know if there is a roadmap necessarily. That's why I think when you listen to influencers, coaches, they tend to stick to what I call our principles, because it's like when you build a house, right? The biblical principle is you want to build your house on the rock, not on the sand, because if you build it on the rock, then it will withstand the storm. If you build it on the sand, then when the storm comes, it's going to blow over. And so principles are really the same thing. The idea is hey, you show up every single day, you take massive action. I tell people simply in business, it's about acting. So meaning taking massive action, tracking what you do, and then pivoting. Because literally a successful business, a successful life is going to be, I'm going to show up, I'm going to do my thing, I'm going to track the results because you can't measure what you don't track, and then I'm going to pivot. When I look at the most common mistake that I see is I think the saying is, if you want to move the business, you have to move the people, because people are the business. And the problem that most people find is that they do not set high enough standards for their people, and mediocrity breeds mediocrity. Yeah. And a lot of people think they're being kind and they're building a great culture. That's the excuse they tell themselves for having low standards. Yeah. But if you look at any high performer in any industry, but if you looked even in sports or in music, I mean, these people are obsessive and they have insanely high standards, so much so that they're willing to lose people around them and things around them. They're willing to give up for something that they want to gain. And that's probably the biggest mistake I see with most small businesses.
So question for you there. So how long have you guys been in business?
So I've been in business a little over 18 years.
18 years. So how do you balance that? So early on, obviously you want to have high standards, right? But you also can't lose people because you don't have too much leverage, right? Let's just say early on. How do you balance that high standard? Would you say just going from the get-go, you set your standard and you don't sway from it? Or is there a difference in level of the size of the company as you're scaling things?
So, I mean, I think I don't know for sure, but my feeling is if I could go back and do it over, I would not settle at all. I would not settle at all, and I would definitely not settle out of the thought process of I need to keep this person, or this person at least is performing at 60%, and if I lose them, then I have to do the 60%.
Right.
I want to do that because what you'll find is before every growth is a dip. You look at the hockey stick and it goes down before it goes up. And usually when you study companies, before they grow, they dip. And what it is they are removing the blockers. I think it was Alex Hermosi who gave the example that when you build a company, it's like a staircase. It's not a straight line of growth. It's you go up, you flatline, you go up, you flatline, you go up, you flatline. So the point being with that is going, I wouldn't settle. You're giving yourself an excuse, not you personally, but maybe people who are watching this. You're giving yourself an excuse going, well, this person's at least giving 40%, or they're at least giving 70%. But you should hold to the standard, even if that causes them to walk out the door, because you will dip and then you will grow massively. And you will be so thankful you went through that pain. But most new managers in my organization or businesses that I see, they're not willing to go through that pain because they're too fearful that pain will sink them. And it's almost like Grant Cardone says, it's really hard to say something on a phone call that will lose you the deal. And most people don't understand that if they haven't been in sales a long time. It's really hard to say something to actually lose a deal. So don't be so fearful of it. Well, the same applies in your business. It's really hard to make one decision that you can't recover from. You can recover from a lot. And the truth is, if you go back to what I said philosophy-wise in business, take action, track your results, and pivot. And so you're constantly, I tried it, nope, I'm going this way. I tried it, nope, I'm going this way. Yeah. And the biggest mistake is people quit, they settle, they give up. So you put up with the employee that you have that you shouldn't be putting up with, or you go up halfway up the mountain and then you second guess yourself and you come down. Then you go up another half of the mountain and you second guess yourself and you come down. Instead of just sticking to the path, getting to the top of the mountain, looking down and going, yeah, I went the long way. Wow, there was a much shorter way. But I got to the top of the mountain. And now I can look, and for my next company, for my next person that I mentor, I can teach them the shorter way up the mountain. But I made it up the mountain because I didn't stop. I kept going. I didn't settle, and I held to that belief. So I'm not sure if that makes sense, but that's where I would go.
I would ask, because I think like everyone maybe has different standards. So when you're saying my standards, like a high standard that you have, what would you say like that is, like for people to understand like where you're coming from when you say that?
You know, like for me personally, to be part of our organization, right, we have our core values, which I never understood the value of core values until you get a tribe of people, because it's a common thing that you can all point to and live by and all that stuff. But like for me, you know, my standards are, it's a whatever it takes perfection mentality. And what I mean by that is, you know, I'm not going to allow people to settle if we don't win the game. There's a famous story of Kobe Bryant who takes the final shot in the NBA finals and he misses, and he takes it again and he misses, and he gets home that night and he calls his high school basketball coach up and asks him to unlock the high school gym. And he goes that same night that he lost the finals and he shoots that shot all night long. That's what I mean by my standards. I want that type of attitude. Now, here's the thing. I expect that. And I'm expecting 120%. Maybe I'll get 90%. Maybe I'll get 100. But what I'm not going to do is sit here and live in like a reality of, oh, well, people can only give 80%, because then they're going to give me 60%. So it's like, for me, I want people to want to win as bad as I want to win. And if you don't want to win the championship as bad as I want to win, that, like, it sounds maybe bad to people listening to it, but this is not the bus you belong on. Yeah. You know, my company, Remindermedia, is just a bus. And it's going from point A to point B. Yep. And my hope is that you get on that bus, and from point A to point B, you're a better person for it. Even I will get off the bus at one point. I'll retire, I'll sell the company, whatever it is. No, never. Yeah, never, exactly. But even I will get off the bus. Everybody gets off the bus. The hope is that when you were on the bus with me, you look back and you go, man, I'm so thankful I got on that journey. Wherever point A to point B took you, I'm so thankful because it shaped who I am today. But what I don't want is that it's an apatheticness of, yeah, Luke just let me punch the clock from 9 to 5. I don't even remember Luke, right. You know, type idea.
Yeah, so no impact. Yeah. I think two things in that, like, community is huge. Like, people are always like striving and going for some type of community, which it sounds like your company has become a part of that for people. And the second would be, I guess, what would you like seek for, like, goal wise when you're looking for people?
Yeah.
Do they have to have certain goals in their head that they want? Or like, so someone's saying they want to join your company, they like your vision, but like you're wanting to see where they're at in the right place to fit your standard. What would you
Yeah, that's a great. So hiring people, I wish I knew how to do extremely well. I have hired hundreds of people and have failed hundreds of times. I have probably hired, it's got to be a couple thousand people at this point, and I only have a 300-person company. Right. So, we've been at it a long time, so people come and go, right? It gives you an idea. And the people I talk to, entrepreneurs that have bigger companies than I, 1,800 employees, they talk similarly about how many people come and go through their companies. But what I have found is I don't really know exactly how to hire, but I've really honed in on there's a couple things I look for. One is energy. There's people who walk into a room and they lift you up. And I'm not talking about they're outspoken or charismatic. There's people that lift you up that aren't charismatic, right? That are not loud and boisterous, that are not the person, the front singer on the stage or something like that. I'm talking about there's an energy about them, that they are into what they do. They are passionate about what they're talking about. Man, when you talk to a software developer and you're hiring that software developer and you ask them, what do you code on for fun? Yeah. The people who are passionate about software development and have an energy towards it versus the ones who don't. So I look for energy in their work and what they're actually bringing to the table. The second thing that I look for is communication skills, because I have found that a lot of things rise and fall with communication. John Maxwell says everything rises and falls with leadership, which is probably true. But I have found the actual pain point, the illness in every situation is a lack of good communication. So it's are you a decent communicator? Can you actually communicate your thoughts and ideas? Because you could be an absolute genius, but if I can't pull that genius out, and if that genius can't interact with other people, it ain't going to work, right? Number 3 that I tend to look for is motivation. This is the hardest one. It's how do you determine someone's drive, someone's why? So some of the things I ask people, as I ask them to tell me about the biggest adversity that they've overcome in their life and how they overcame that and what that meant to them, right? And try to figure out from a motivation standpoint. The other thing I ask people is, where do you want to see yourself, right? It's a stereotypical question, but I'm looking for someone who's not like a leaf in the wind, just blowing wherever the wind goes, but actually has intention. I love to hire family people. Why? Because they have kids. So I know at the very least, you might not be personally motivated, but if I stick a picture of your 2 kids in front of you, I can at least get you to be motivated for them more than likely, right? So motivation is one. And then the last thing is character. And the mistake I've made probably the most is hiring for talent, like good communication skills, good energy, good motivation, but not the best character. And character, is one of those hard things too. I ask people, how do you give back in an interview? How do you give back? And I want to hear, it could be anything, right? We have an amazing team lead. When I asked her that question when we were hiring her, she said, basically shared a personal story in her family of drugs. And she mentors women who have been addicted to drugs and are coming out of that and all that stuff. So you learn about the character of people. The other thing I ask people a lot of times is, who do you follow? Who do you read? Who do you look up to? Because you can learn a lot about people by the people they look up to, by the people they read. You can learn how their mind thinks. That's not an end-all be-all for hiring, but it at least paints a picture of the character of that person. You can also, walk them through scenarios like, what did you like about your last company? What did you dislike? And you try to pry into people's psyche of, tell me the things that pissed you off so you can talk poorly about your last company. I can understand where your character is, because you'd be surprised a lot of people will just trash their last employer and stuff like that. So those are the 4 things I look for when I'm interviewing. And the thing that I've come to is really interviewing is like sales. It's both an art and a science. Yeah. So the art side is my intuition, my gut, feeling you out, reading you. You guys are active listening to me right now, nodding your heads, eye contact, all that stuff. And then there's the science side, which is ask the exact same questions to every single candidate, have a rubric where you're grading people. Don't walk into an interview just with interview questions. Walk into an interview with a scoring sheet of, these are the character traits that I look for in this type of role to make someone successful.
That's crazy, man. It's crazy because you can see you do it all the time. Yeah. If you were to ask me, it would be like a blanket, here's the 3 questions that we asked, but it's you can feel your energy, as you're sharing. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Because I've made a lot of mistakes doing it. I've made a ton of mistakes.
How we started with how does you've got a very successful business. Yeah. How do you scale that? And then we've come to a conversation of people right? That's all behind, where that starts. So, question, I guess, more personally for you. So, what would be like the why behind what you're doing? Like, why you got into your business? Why you like doing what you do? Like, what's like the big why factor? Because I think that a lot of like successful people, to hear what that is from them, because it can strive. Like, do I have that? Like, that search for why?
You know what's interesting is like because everybody talks about the why, and I don't. I've gone back and forth on it a lot. So my simple why in the beginning was I didn't want to be poor. I wanted to be rich, and that was just the truth. Is we grew up not rich. I don't think we knew that we were poor, but we were not wealthy by any means. Steven knew. So I didn't want to worry about the car that I was driving, not look wise, but that it was going to break down. I didn't want to think about bills. I wanted to be successful. So there's a lot of that. So that was a strong enough why to get me to the first phase. So I encourage people all the time, like, if your why is buying a car, if your why is good, fantastic. Because what I've learned over the years is your why should evolve. And in fact, the best performers that I meet, their why is basically chasing their why. I don't know if that makes sense, but their why is chasing their why. Their why is always evolving, i.e. they're, for example, they're trying to become the best version of themselves. So like Tom Brady was asked, how do you feel after winning the Super Bowl ring? Why go for another ring? And he's just like, I don't want to let people down. It's like, yeah, but Tom, that doesn't make any sense. What do you mean let people down? You have, freaking 4 rings at this point, 5 rings at this point. And it was, no, I don't want to let myself down. I don't want to let myself down of what I could become and what I could achieve. And that's a lot of it for me.
So I think some of the newer agents on our team that have like smaller whys, I actually see them being more successful. Not that I think a big why is super important. That's what we have now, but it does develop over time. So the ones that are like, I want $100,000,
yes,
I want to make that this year. It is amazing to me how it's like, it's so easy to track that. And they want it so bad that I see them doing better than someone's like, I want to, that sounds bad, but I want to provide for my family, or something like they can't actually detail what that actually is.
Well, because there's a rule in business, right? Clarity, obviously you can execute. When you have lack of clarity, you have lack of execution. So when you don't have specifics on your goal, on your why, you can't execute. And so you naturally can give yourself paralysis when the goal's too big. This is why when you research goals, the first thing that comes up is SMART goals. You want specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Meaning you have set out your why to go, hey, I want to make 100K this year. It's very specific. It's very achievable. It's very relevant. It's time bound. All these things. It's measurable. Yeah. So it's a smart goal because you can see it and lay it out, and you can push somebody to it, and you can get an accountability partner for it. The bigger why to me is after you make money. So after I made my first $1 million, it is interesting how you go, oh yeah. It's very like the battle at this point is going, well, I don't have to work as hard. Like that's the battle at that point. And so the why has to transcend the materialistic thing, and it has to move towards the bigger picture, the impact, I say. Like you're trying to leave an impact on yourself, on people. And that's why I think the high end or the high performing athletes and the business people, it's all about their legacy. It's all about the best version of themselves. It's chasing that man in the mirror because that's the only thing that can ground them enough not to get lazy.
Yeah, it's funny. You listen to Pat Bet-David?
Yeah.
So he has a new book, Choose Your Enemies Wisely. But you mentioned Tom Brady in there, and how he's like, I don't want to let people down. And one of his comments in his last interview with Pat Bet-David, he would go on the field and he was like, I wasn't friends with anybody on the other team.
That's crazy.
I'd walk by him and I'd be like, I'm not talking to you. You know what I mean? You're not on my team. What do you think about that?
I love that.
Do you have like an enemy in your business kind of thing? Do you think that is a big part of your success? So we have the why, but he talks about having a big enemy.
We interviewed a guy on our podcast. He's a coach, Coach Burt. I don't know if you know Coach Burt, but he's an awesome guy. You should look up. And he talks about, he wrote a book called Pray Drive. And it was all about how do you activate your prey drive, because you're an animal and animals have prey drive. They're pursuing the prey. And how do you activate that for yourself? And one of the ways to activate it is competition. Is look up, like if you guys want to activate, you're in real estate, so you want to activate your prey drive, pull up the real trends and see the people who are beating you, right? Look out here at the billboards. I passed a billboard that had 4 different agents flashing up on it, right? Just coming to you guys' office. And it's like, you have nothing personally against them. Right. But we interviewed a guy, Charles Weintraub, if I'm pronouncing his name the right way. He was saying what he would do is he would pick an area. And he would find out, okay, I want to farm in this area, i.e. be the number 1 agent in this area. And he would find the number 1 agent. Who did the most sales? Maybe this agent did 10 sales in this community and it's more than anybody else. He'd print out a picture of them and put the picture on the mirror. And every day he would say, I'm coming for you. Right? And he's
no idea what's going on.
Nothing. Right? And he literally ends up beating them, getting 11 sales, and they get 10. And now he markets that community. I'm the number 1 agent in the area. And I was like, oh, that's such a brilliant marketing strategy, but it's also a brilliant mental strategy. Yeah. Michael Jordan, if you watch The Last Dance, what do you take away from it? He used every slight against him as a chip on his shoulder to grow. Does he truly hate the people or have any real ill will towards them? Probably not. But what he does know is, hey man, this is a game. This is the game of capitalism, right? It's the game. The scoreboard is winning in the growth of your business. And that's just one game we play. We play many games in the game of life. But, I think using everything like competition or adversity that happens to you as a chip on your shoulder to get better is awesome.
Well, we do have to wrap it up. I got 2 questions, and selfish questions. One, the first one is, you mentioned trackability. And so I'm super curious, because the one thing that's helping our organization move forward is we've been super trackable this year. We know our numbers down to a T. But one of the things I realize is, as we're getting bigger, it's harder to track it per department, right? Because you have to put people in charge. Well, you're a $70 million company, and I don't know how many managers you have, right, that you have to be in charge of. What does it look like at that level to track? Like, what's the number one thing that you have to know to get your numbers right? Because one data piece that's missing can drastically affect the course of your company. So what does that look like?
So I think like my mind goes 2 places. Like no matter, and I've learned this probably the hard way. No matter how big your organization gets, you only manage a few people, right? If you're good at what you do. So as your organization gets bigger and bigger, right, you're going to manage a few people, and those people are going to then manage a few people. And then those people, the mistake a lot of people make is that they still try to manage down the people down at the lowest level or 2 tiers below them. No, your job is to manage just the people under you. So what does it look like in terms of getting my numbers right? Well, it looks like my COO getting his numbers right with his people, and I hold him accountable. And he's supposed to report to me what I expect. And if I don't get what I expect from him, he's on the chopping block, not his people, like he is. And that forces the accountability all the way down. Instead, what I used to do is I used to be like, oh, what's going on? We're not getting our numbers. Okay, let me go talk to this person in sales operations. And all of a sudden, you've muddied the whole water. You've created a lack of clarity. So that's one track my mind goes down. The second, which is more maybe tangible or tactical when it comes to like tracking your actual numbers. There's a saying, sales solves all pain. Right. So the number one thing you have to make sure is happening in your organization is that revenue is growing and profit is not declining. It is growing as well. Right. You should have a good ratio of, as your revenue grows, your EBITDA grows. And so what you want to look at is you want to go, well, what's the best indicator of future performance? Past performance. So if you want to understand where you're going, you got to understand where you've been. And so what I always encourage, and this is what we do as an organization, is going, okay, revenue is the main thing I need to track. Revenue is driven by sales. Sales is driven by activity of what I do to get those sales. And we literally reverse engineer. You would probably be surprised to see it's on Excel docs. We are literally using Excel docs, mapping all the way down to, we know, and we do it in cohorts for people who understand data. We know callers who have been with us 0 to 30 days average this many sales a day, 60 to 90 days average this, 100 to this. Like we know and we track throughout the months. Well, if Cody's one of my salesmen at this point in time next July, he'll be here 180 days. So he should be averaging this at that moment in time. And if we have him on board and this many people, and so it kind of lays it all out. to allow us to develop our targets. But the real genesis, I feel, of your question is really, how do I get these numbers tracked? You don't. You do because you're a small organization, but you don't. You hold the people accountable to do their numbers. And if you hold them accountable and don't muck it up, don't get in their way, then a lot of times I've seen people rise.
Yeah, it's all for me. It's all the foundational piece. I'm just trying to figure out, we've set our foundations wrong in the past, and you have to backtrack every time and then go forward. So it's just setting that right foundation and move forward.
Give people autonomy, I would encourage.
Okay.
I've failed at that.
So hire the right person, give them
Give people autonomy. Do not settle on the goal and the numbers you agreed to. So most people, they don't give autonomy. So then now it's both of your faults because they're like, well, you're in it and I'm in it, so we're shared responsibility. Or they give autonomy, but when the numbers don't reach, they buy the excuse and they don't hold accountable to the number. It's not about liking the player or loving the player. The coach loves the player, but you either win the game or you don't. We're not sitting. The fans love I'm in Philadelphia. The Eagles fans love Philly, right? They love the Eagles, but they boo them when they're losing. They boo them when they lose. So it's the point with that is most of us, we allow the excuse because we think that's what human relationship calls for. No. True leadership is not allowing an excuse. Because true leadership is holding people to the goal that they set out and holding them responsible, because in that pain is where they learn. Progress comes from pain. It doesn't come from comfort. So if you allow people the comfort of missing their goal, you are robbing them of growth.
That's good. All right, last question. What's the biggest failure you've had in your business?
So the biggest failure, I don't know what the biggest is.
Maybe the one you learned from the most.
Sure, that's hard too. So there's a couple I've learned from, but I know we're short on time. But I'll give you one. So we lost an account that was $1.4 million, and we lost it literally overnight. And what happened is, for those that don't know Remindermedia, we do printed products as one of our main avenues of marketing. So postcards, customizable magazines. So we had won this account in the financial services arena, Morgan Stanley. We got up to around 3,000 advisors using it. And when I say 1.4 million, I mean recurring and growing 1.4 million. So there's a difference between closing a $1.4 million deal and closing a deal that's going to pay you 1.4 million every year. And this is a deal that's paying you 1.4 million every year and growing. And what happened was we printed the wrong thing on the magazine. It's a pretty bad mess up. We printed the wrong thing on their marketing going out. And it went out, and it was actually a mistake by one of our long tenured employees. They were working late into the night trying to do a good thing for the company and ended up putting a file in the wrong place, and our processes weren't built the way they should have been built. And the wrong logos got put on the wrong magazines, and it's just a nightmare. And overnight, we literally are losing that. I remember our VP of corporate sales, Rick, who had landed the account, and that's where most of his money was coming from for his pay. When that happened, he was out on the curb at our office, just outside on the curb, head with this grown man, got to be, he's almost 50 at the time, I'm sure, head between his legs, just on the curb. And the people, all the employees are like, what's going on? Because they can tell there's a lot of heartache or, people moving around. And, I look at that, and I've learned a ton from that mistake. One is, and maybe it's the most relevant for everybody listening, is the wolf in the closet a lot of times turns out to be a bunny rabbit, meaning it doesn't kill you. And so when you make a mistake, whether it's on I've had lawsuits against me. I've had 17 people quit on me in 2 weeks. I've lost a $1.4 million account. All these things feel like they're going to sink you. When I got the first lawsuit papers, which was a stupid lawsuit, right, my heart sunk, right? My heart sunk of oh my gosh, it's over. I knew it. Yep, we're done. Yeah. You're never done. You're never done. Resilience is where it's what is the saying? A winner is just a loser who tried one more time. That's what it is. And it's like, it's not going to be as bad as you think it is. Hold your ground. There's no reason to be out on the curb, head between your legs. Hold yourself up. Second thing is, when you make a mistake, own up to the mistake and go above and beyond with the mistake. We tried to own up to the mistake, but only tried to recover based upon what we had done versus owning it fully. And that taught me a valuable lesson of like, when you make the mistake, it's not you did $1 and the mistake should be repaid $1. No, if they paid $1, you need to repay them $10. Like, you need to go all in, you need to own the mistake. And so we made the mistake of not owning the mistake fully, and we ended up losing the whole account because of that. So that was another one that I learned. And then it really teaches you, like, in all that, we talked about this a little, but it's when your back's against the wall is when you perform the best and you get the most creative. So instead of looking at the adversity as a pain point, look at it as a blessing, because we replaced those 3,000 accounts in like 7 months. And it had taken us 3 years to get up to 3,000 accounts with Morgan Stanley. But because we needed that revenue, because we had already built the infrastructure, already hired the people, we had to get more creative, more aggressive. And we used that as a genesis, as a launching pad to take us to the next level, to be more creative, to learn for the next one. And I think a lot of people don't look at their pain that way. They don't look at it through the lens of being a blessing. Yeah. And if you start looking at your pain point in the failings as like, oh, no, this is a blessing that I'm going through this now. This is a blessing that is opening up another door and opportunity for me. It changes your whole perspective.
Yeah. That's good. Yep. I mean, that's, with everything said, it's like perspective and a lot of it, how you do it.
Your worst day is somebody's dream day, is what I always tell people. Your worst day is somebody's dream day, because there's somebody worse off than you right now. And they would love to be where you're at.
I didn't know he was so good, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
I only talk to him every day. No, it's pretty impressive. It really is. Just to watch you speak. I heard you at an event, recently, but I was so shocked to see the amount of confidence that you have now in this business. And I guess it comes from just massive experience, years of experience, but it's really cool to see that you're leading such a big company.
Thanks, man. No, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Thanks for coming on. Hope you guys have a great day.
I thought he was going to shed some tears.
Yeah.
Peace out.
Yeah, thank you, guys.